So thank you all again for being here. We're going to move into talking about the issue of abuse in sports in particular, and really start trying to come up with some suggestions and some thoughts about things that we can do to raise awareness about this issue, which is one that we've really been blind to for a long time, and also think about some action steps. So I'm not even going to try to introduce everybody because they're going to do a much better job introducing themselves, and we're just going to go down the line.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for my tardiness. That New York traffic could be a bit hard to get through. Like Chris said, my name is Keyon Dooling. I'm a 12-year NBA veteran. I retired this year, just recently, before the season started. I had to deal with my past. I had to dive in. I couldn't run from it anymore. I couldn't mask it anymore. And I'm a survivor. I've been multiple times abused sexually. I've been physically abused. Growing up, having to grow up in the inner city, the bullies that you have to encounter. I've been socially, economically, any kind of abuse that you want to say. I felt that pain. And for me, the healing process. I'm an infant in the healing process, but through Christ who strengthens me, I've been able to go through this process really, really fast, really, really hard, really, really united with my family. And the therapy and the treatment that I've been receiving is second to none. But more so than that, the lives and the hurt that I hear from all these kids as I come out and I tell my story. Most of the kids, I resonate with them because I'm an athlete. A lot of the kids who hurt from my community they can't really put a voice with it or a face with it because in my community, so many black men don't come out and talk about it. Whether it's the insecurities that it's created, whether it's the lack of treatment or healing or support you may have from your community or your pastors or whoever it may be, your family, it brings a certain level of fear. And I'm dealing with it now. The way that my family has reacted to this situation, I can see and understand why so many victims don't come out. But here's me doing my part. I think that God put me in this position for a reason, and I would be doing society an injustice if I don't come out and talk about my experiences and try and help these young men and women around our country heal. Not only the victims, but the predators as well. I think there's some steps that need to be taken for people who do these things to people. In particular, I've been dealing with one of the people who hurt me, who touched me as a youth. And, that takes a lot of courage, not only on my behalf, but on their behalf too, as predators, being able to say, hey, look in the mirror, I did this act. And there's a lot of embarrassment and a lot of shame, and that could be just as powerful as the hate that we sometimes develop from, our encounters. So when Chris asked me to come up, me and my wife, decided that, it's nothing for us to drive down. We got a great support system at home. My mother-in-law's there with our 4 wonderful kids. And I couldn't wait to, have this opportunity and this platform to talk about my experience. So that's my introduction.
My name is Chris Gavigan, and for the last 3.5 years I've been directing a documentary called Coached into Silence, which is about the sexual abuse of boys within the world of youth sports. I'd like to say that it was some journalistic curiosity that got me interested in the topic, but that wasn't the case at all. When I had just turned 14 years old, looked 12, acted 10, but when I had just turned 14 years old, I skated down the wrong block in my neighborhood and right into the carefully laid trap of a serial sexual predator who had been coaching for nearly 25 years at that point. The documentary, over these last 3 years, my story was not going to be part of the story. I was going to let other people bear this burden. I had started to interview brave men from all over this country who shared their darkest secrets and the worst moments of their lives with me, and I just started to feel like a fraud. And that led me to send a letter to my own former coach and abuser who I hadn't seen in a dozen years, asking if he would be involved in this project about the men who made us what we are today, and mentorship. Even though we hadn't spoken over a decade, he leapt to the opportunity. I sat down and interviewed him as part of it, and he freedom in dropping that shield and not telling a story, but telling my story. It's really the engine that has kept us going for me. I've been inspired by every single person that I've met, and they heal me every day through their own courage. One last biographical thing about me. Because of my work on Coaching to Silence, which the film is still in progress and we hope to be finished by the spring, I was approached by the U.S. Olympic Committee as part of an athlete advisory group as they tried to put standardized systems in place which will hopefully go across the entire Olympic umbrella and be trickle down to every league, every feeder system, every high school, every community group, every YMCA. And so hopefully we can, I know that we're influencing this issue from the bottom up, in the grassroots way, but hopefully there's a trickle down effect from that work too. And that is something that I never would have had the opportunity to do if not for this fund. So just good morning everybody, thank you so much for being here. And now,
good morning. I'm Bob Holton. I'm the co-founder and president of Road to Recovery. About 10 years ago, another priest and I decided that sexual abuse victims of clergy primarily needed direct assistance, like rent being paid, food, clothing, shelter, etc. So we began Road to Recovery. I am a former Irish Christian brother of 23 years, a former priest of 15 years. I just left the priesthood about 11 months ago because I just couldn't take it anymore, and I don't think... And currently, the way I connect with this topic is that, and I'll tell you how, this is an example of how we work in Road to Recovery. I got a Jerry Sandusky person, survivor, out of prison, set him up in a hotel, fed him, clothed him, and reintroduced him to his family/girlfriend and her children, etc. And I've been following him ever since. When Jim Boeheim went after the Bernie Fine victims, we went to Syracuse to demand that Jim Boeheim be fired because I don't think that's the way victims should be treated. And then within 20 minutes of that media event, we received a call from a woman who said that her boyfriend had been abused by Bernie Fine too, and we've been working with him. And in some cases, I will mention the names of victims, and I will in this case because he's given me permission, but Floyd Van Hooser, also known as David, who is in prison now in upstate New York, what is that victim? And we've been working with him ever since. So we sent him money practically every month for his canteen. He is now working on an appeal of his conviction for whatever, and that's what we do. It's nice to be here.
Hi, my name is Katherine Starr, and I started the organization Safe4Athletes. The reason I started that organization is I'm a two-time Olympic athlete for Great Britain, and my head Olympic coach sexually abused me as well as sexual harassment my entire swimming career. And I actually thought I would just leave peacefully in the night and just lead a quiet life and just walk away from this issue. Yet it gnawed at me, and it was just I just couldn't get away from it. And a few years ago, I was actually coaching and back in my sport, and I saw how clearly abuse was so easily. It was just very easy, and I felt like there wasn't, both from the parental side, and I'll talk more about this, both from the parental side and the athlete side, how susceptible it was to be in vulnerable situations. And that's where I felt that I needed to start an organization, and I reached out to actually my former athletic director, and we created, and some other Olympians, and created Safe4Athletes to create policies and procedures and go to the extent of actually banning coaches, so to give the athlete a voice and to help parents make informed decisions whom they're putting their child athlete in the care of. So, thank you.
Joe Ehrmann, I guess most of you were there. Let me just add two things. One, a Coach for America, I try to bring about communal and societal change, or bringing values and purpose back into sports and trying to figure out the role of sports. And then the second thing I would say that I neglected in my speech, the turning point of my life was when my brother died. I met with a specialist in death, dying, and bereavement. And he gave me Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was a German concentration camp survivor, went in with his new bride, his mother, his father, and his brother. He was the only one that came out of the camp. His wife died 2 days after liberation. But he says in that book, he says the greatest of all human freedoms is the ability to choose how you're going to respond to any situation. And no matter what life deals with you, you can make meaning and add value to that. When my brother died, we ended up building a Ronald McDonald House in his memory. That's now 30 years old, but life has been about, and all of my work and ministry has taken the deep pains of my life, trying to figure out how do I make meaning and add value to other people on behalf of those. So it's wonderful to be with this great panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Marcie Hamilton, and I'd like to thank MaleSurvivor, especially Chris, one of my former students, for this event and for the organization. I'm very proud to be on the advisory board for MaleSurvivor. I'm a law professor at Cardozo Law School in New York City, clerk for Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and I specialize in institution-based child sex abuse. I write about it, and I frequently am on social media every day, bringing folks up to date on all the things that are happening in this world, because things are changing so quickly. I've just agreed to be the national director for a coalition of 200 organizations for legal reform. I focus on statutes of limitations, mandatory reporting. I wrote the book on statute of limitations, Justice Denied. So I'm all about finding a better future for victims and for survivors, and also MaleSurvivor joining with all these other groups, and I hope we'll be able to pull in all the groups we've heard about today into this national coalition, because I think in numbers we really can change the world.
I'm attorney Mitchell Garabedian out of Boston, Massachusetts. Chris, thanks for asking me to be on this panel. Being here is a great inspiration. Survivors are a great inspiration to me. I've represented victims of sexual abuse for years. With the Catholic Church alone, over 1,000 victims, clergy sexual abuse. I represent victims of Penn State. I represent 20 children who were sexually abused by a Red Sox clubhouse manager. I represent a victim against Bob Oliver, who was molested when Bob Oliver was at Christ the King High School here in New York. The list is endless. I represent neighbors, children, friends. There's no box here. It's just open-ended. And what you've started a movement that's not going to end. People always ask me, when's this going to end? I say, you don't get it. This is just beginning. It's just beginning because of your inspiration. I represent 24 victims in Haiti who were molested at a Jesuit camp. I just recently came back from Haiti, and one of their primary responses was, boy, what you people have done in America, what the survivors have done in America has inspired us. That's why they came forward. And those children range in age from 17 to age 25, but they've been watching what you do. So I take my hat off to all of you. Thank you.
My name is Matt Pakness, and good coaches saved my life. I wasn't abused through sport, I was abused before sport. And as a result, I also had a terminally ill mom. And during my football experience in high school, I was a sole 3-year starter on a football team that never lost a game in New Jersey. And Senior year, I was one of the captains in All-State, recruited nationally by a lot of different schools, including Penn State, and did not go to Penn State. I went to Brown University. My mom died the day before our state playoff game against Orange High School in New Jersey, and which featured a player who went on to star in the NFL for 12 years. And we beat them because we had a team. And we had a great coach. I'm just emotional about my coach because I just saw him. Thanks. Anyhow, which brings me to this. I was abused as a kid, and went on to Brown, played at Brown, coached at Brown. I was an offensive line coach. After I coached at Brown, I was given 2 opportunities. One to coach at the University of Washington in Seattle, and the other coach at Penn State University. And the reason I'm on this panel is because I chose the latter. Now, Joe had talked this morning about men who cultivate men, and the gentleman out at Washington was a guy named Don James, and he was a cultivator of men. And unfortunately, I went to Penn State. Now, I didn't see anything happen that was inappropriate at Penn State. If I had, I would have liked to have thought, had I been in McQuarrie's position, I don't want to blame him, but with my background, I think I would have dismembered Coach Sandusky. Since Penn State, and I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional about this. Since Penn State, I went on and I coached at University of Rhode Island. After coaching at University of Rhode Island, I started my own consulting practice. I primarily wanted to initially work with kids, at-risk kids, and help them overcome the travesties of abuse. But it evolved, and I started working with corporations. So now I work with primarily corporations, thank you, and helping them identify amongst potential leaders who can be the greatest leaders. And I still work on a volunteer basis with students in some survivor groups and helping them do the same. And so I'm here to help people identify with the power and control dynamics that allow themselves to get caught up in an environment where horrible things are happening and no one's willing to say anything. A lot of what I do with corporations now is transparency and helping them identify and look at things honestly and realistically. And I think that's what we're all here for, is to unveil and pull back the clouds and pull back the curtains so people can see the truth. And I think it's a real honor to be on this staff with all these other truth seekers. So with that said, I guess we're going to get started, right? I guess.
Thank you again, everybody.